The Senate is a fake institution. It is supposedly the world's greatest deliberative body, but every accusation is a confession, and the opposite is true. The Senate doesn't do anything, ever.
Hi again, everybody. Mike Andrews and Aaron Baird joining you for the Narrative Podcast again this week. It's good to be here with you. And Aaron, it's good to see the lawmakers across the street getting back at it. That was quite the layoff from the summer session until picking things up after the election. But we're back in full swing.
Exactly, we're back, and they've already worn David out. He needed to take the day off because he was there all day yesterday, getting ready for the big vote on the bathroom bill. It feels good to be back in the work. And again, I'm not tired of winning yet. I got to tell you, after the way things went over the election, and then to come right back and get something like that done is a huge deal.
Well, I need to own why David is not here today. It's because he had to do a media interview yesterday afternoon, and that was what put him over the edge. So, David, I am sorry. I appreciate you taking one for the team like you did. I didn't mean to put you on the IL.
It is one of the things I love most about David so much, that he agreed to do this job as policy director, because I said, he was like, well, what would it be to be the policy director? I remember the conversation years ago. It's like, oh, you're going to be working with lawmakers. And you saw his face go, what? And then I said, and you got to do some media interviews. He goes, what? and I think it's the media interviews he likes the least of all of them. But he does great on it. And he does so good. And he's better than me. And so you go off and talk to the media a little bit, David.
I do enjoy working with David on a daily basis, but I always have a little pause when there's a media request. I'm like, oh no, this is the one hard spot that I've got to ruin David's day now.
That he will become violent over. Is like, David, we need you to talk to the press. What? It's part of the job, though. It goes with it.
It is.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, the bathroom bill passed out of the Senate yesterday. It's now headed to the governor's desk. So for people who may not know, what is the bill? Let's just do that whole kind of overview and just catch people up to speed.
Yeah, so, for regular listeners of the podcast, you'd remember it was House Bill 183. And basically it says in K-12 schools, public and private, and in universities, that boys can't go in girls' bathrooms and locker rooms and can't stay in overnight stays with girls, things like that, no matter how they identify, things like that. These honestly really common sense things that 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, wouldn't have been a debate. And then all of a sudden have become. And so this was originally House Bill 183. It got amended right before the summer into Senate Bill 104, which was another bill actually CCV was supporting regarding the College Credit Plus program, and got stuck into that bill, which meant all that needed to happen with it was to get what's called a concurrence vote back in the Senate, since it already passed the Senate once. And President Huffman was really clear early on that they wanted to do this. And actually at the time when the House passed it, the media asked Mike DeWine if he would sign it, and he said he would, which awesome. That's great. That's very encouraging. And so, they came back in session just this week. 2 days ago. So Tuesday, we're recording this on a Thursday. On Tuesday, they had some hearings, but then Wednesday they picked this up first day on the floor and got it done. So a ton of credit to Representative Beth Lear and Representative Adam Byrd, who were the original bill sponsors. They were there with David and the whole team yesterday as this bill got voted on, and especially again to President Huffman for getting this done quickly when they come back.
Yeah, so we still have a few more weeks left in this session of the General Assembly. It's been a good General Assembly for CCV, and that's not to toot our own horns, but I think that's where we talk about getting involved at the state level. And I'm in year-end fundraising mode, and putting together our impact report. Yeah. I think we're at 4 or 5 sponsored bills now that we've seen passed into law, and we've testified on 10 to 12 committee hearings. Like, it's been a busy year for CCV, or a busy General Assembly, I should say.
It has, and one of the big things is none of these bills that we're working on anymore are easy lifts, right? Are easy to get done. We're really trying to be laser focused on, if we're going to get involved in a piece of legislation, it's got to be a culture changer or a culture shifter, and that's something like the bathroom bill. What's amazing to me about this bill in particular is I was actually reminiscing with my wife about this just the other night. 10 years ago, I was working on a very similar bill in Arizona, And it reminds me of sort of the video we shot with House Bill 68 of, people didn't want to touch these issues, right? Even common sense things that boys shouldn't go in girls' bathrooms. Politicians were so afraid of the media. They were so afraid of the press on these things that to bring an idea like this forward would just send them running like cockroaches in the light, right? I mean, it was unbelievable. I remember in Arizona, the one media member, one of David's favorite people, if he had ever met him, called this the "show me your papers before you pee" bill, which was the dumbest idea that somehow this was going to require people to show proof before they went to the restroom, which is never the way any restroom has ever worked. But you know what this bill does allow for is that if a woman says, "Hey, there's a man in my locker room," the business has the right and the police have the right to come in and say, "Get out of here," or you'll be arrested. And it's those types of things that are just common sense that for too long, lawmakers were scared by the press. And now what you've seen, especially in this last election, where they actually saw these issues are winners, right? All the ads we saw on Save Women's Sports, all the ads we saw on the SAFE Act, they see this is actually a winning cause for them to do what's right. It's encouraging to see the courage that members have now.
Yeah, and as we still process through the election outcomes and things like that, one thing that we're seeing here locally is this story out of Olentangy schools where a principal, I think, trying to be sympathetic to people of varying viewpoints, but with a target for those who would be feeling particularly depressed by the election results, came out with a letter that was not well received widely and rightly called out for it, now has been suspended. And this is just part of the bigger thing that we're seeing throughout culture. And I mentioned this in our staff meeting last week one day where it's just like, I was online to see some meltdowns, and I can admit that was a bit of a sinful spirit, but then seeing the degree to which this has people upset and borderline unhinged is becoming sad.
Is scary. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, this letter that the principal of Orange High School, of Olentangy Orange High School, wrote, it starts off with, "I have struggled this week to find the right words for the school. I can't write a message that pretends like the election didn't happen, especially when so many of you are struggling with how to move forward. I know you are struggling with how to move forward with your students who are afraid, but also how to move forward with colleagues that don't share your views." Why is it a struggle to move forward with colleagues that don't share your views in our public education system, for goodness sake? And what always strikes me whenever I see a letter like this is from a school administrator, right? I'll say first and foremost, let's say a Christian, a Christian who's a Republican at a school like this, who is a principal, would never in a million years have thought to write a letter like that after the 2020 election with Joe Biden, right? They would know instantly, like that would be inappropriate to do something like that, right? And even I think in sort of a common sense way, like a letter, writing something like that to your entire school body would be seen as so inappropriate and so unprofessional. But it just speaks to the culture that is so deep within these, especially suburban public schools, but really all public schools, that this principal wrote this letter with no sense that this was going to blow up and become a controversy, right? This is what my whole thing a lot of times about critical theory and the way critical theory and progressivism has so penetrated our public school system is it's the water they swim in, right? She's a fish that doesn't know she's wet, right? That has no idea that that people would look at something like this that is so obviously unprofessional and wrong and be offended by it and have concerns. And all it makes me think of is what, over the years, to build a culture that's this unhealthy, what are the things that have been done that led her to this place to think, I'm going to write this letter after the election? And actually, you could tell she wrote this with the sense that people were going to pat her on the back for it and say, so brave, so courageous, right? And that to me just speaks to the really unhealthy culture in these schools, and why, once again, we say get your kids out, right? This is not an environment that shows that it's set aside even promoting a biblical perspective or a basic reality perspective, but it shows a culture that's hostile. Like that, why would it be a struggle for you to be with people that you know voted differently than you? That's unhealthy.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that we've got this divide based on how people vote within an environment like a school, where teachers should all be on the same page to educate the kids and to do their jobs and, move them up to the next grade and that kind of thing. But we're seeing this schism of, it's no longer about focusing on what still unites us. It's about only focusing on the things that really shouldn't divide us, but we're going to make a bigger issue of them so that they do divide us. And that's where it becomes such a problem.
You worked in a secular hospital before coming to CCV. Like, you, not in a million years would you think to send out a memo to all of your colleagues. You got a bunch of staff working for you, like to say, hey, oh man, in 2020 when Joe Biden went, oh, I know you guys are hurting today, but let's like that. It's just, where would your mindset be to do something like this?
Yeah. Well, I think too, with the fact that we are seeing some legitimate, what seems to be mental breakdowns happening because of the election results, what can we do as Christians, Aaron, to bring the hope of Jesus? Because we ultimately know that's what's missing here, is that these people have made politics their God, and when they see that God slain, then they lose their minds because they no longer have purpose and meaning. And we can offer that in Jesus, but there's so many ways that it's not going to be received, but to just still be Christ-like even in those interactions, and try and assuage some of those stereotypes that are fueling the way that they're feeling without being based in fact.
Well, I think this is where it's really healthy, and I preach this as much to myself as I do to folks listening to the podcast. It's where we need to get ourselves offline a little bit more, right? Like,
amen.
I read a letter like this woman wrote, and it's such a sign that she spends way too much time on Facebook, right? It reads just like this super online presence, and recognize that yes, people can disagree vehemently. We've got great friends and neighbors who very much disagree with what I do here at CCV and the work we do, but are just great neighbors, great people to be around. We have a lot of fun talking sports and things like that. And it was one of the things I thought J.D. Vance really demonstrated incredibly well on the campaign trail, especially going on podcasts with people like Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and all these other places, saying, hey, it's not worth losing a relationship over politics, right? That's not to say politics doesn't matter, right? And honestly, that's my prayer for this principle. I'm not even right now willing to come out and say she needs to lose her job or things like that. By all means, if she's somebody who doesn't recognize, even after all of this, how inappropriate this was, then yeah, she's probably somebody you don't want leading a school. But we don't want to be we don't want to be engaging in cancel culture the same way they do, because what cancel culture is more than anything is it's an unforgiving, an ungrace-filled posture, right? Sort of mob rule at folks, and we are a saved people, which implies we were a people that were damned to wrath and suffering, and only by the grace of God are we saved. And I think we want to demonstrate that with folks who even wrong us, as I feel like this principle did for those folks. So I think having that real perspective of the world around us, and also being a people of grace who, we are going to be wronged, and grace, what grace isn't is saying that didn't happen. What grace is saying, I recognize that it happened and I can forgive. That's the key there.
Yeah, and not letting something divide you that didn't unite you in the first place is a way that I've thought of it.
Amen.
Too. Like that goes with family relationships, those neighborhood relationships that you're talking about. It's not your politics that have united you. There may be people that you have relationships with strictly because they share your political party, but the vast majority of people that you interact with on a daily basis, there's something greater. There's a bigger tie there than just how you vote, and you don't have to let that separate you.
And what we also don't have to buy into the lie that the media wants to say is that, like, this binary that we either have to be completely hostile to people who disagree with us all the time, or we can't advocate strongly for the things we believe in, right? I'm really direct, especially anymore, especially on these trans issues and things like that, of how, and the abortion issue, of how awful and treacherous these things are. But I also recognize that people can hold these views that are first and foremost valuable in the eyes of God, that are genuinely trying to do the right thing, and that can be just a good hang sometimes. Like there's basic realities of that. But that's not going to change, sort of my fierce opposition to their advocacy, especially when the things they're doing are hurting people, right? It's I get criticized sometimes for saying like trans ideology is stupid. Oh, you can't say that. It's not being winsome. Listen, not being clear about what trans ideology is doing has led to more kids than we can count being sterilized, right? So let's not give an inch to that. That doesn't mean we need to go around and get into fights with everybody we see that disagrees with us, but we're not loving anybody by mincing words on things like that. And so, both of these things can be true. We can live in this tension. If you're looking for a nice, clean life where everything is put into a nice, clean box, that's not the Christian walk. And so I think that's really the path forward for us.
Yeah, and if I can do a podcast with a Cubs fan,
exactly right, truly,
there's hope for everybody out there.
Hope for America too.
If I can put 2016 behind us,
a melting pot if we've ever seen one. So,
well, we've got a great interview coming up with Eric Teetsel. A lot of fun talking with Eric, just about what we can expect from the Trump administration, what we've seen from some of his cabinet picks. Honestly, didn't know what to expect. I didn't know a lot about Eric, but I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I know our audience will too.
Well, and Eric is a dear friend, and he's somebody I respect a lot because, one, he's brilliant. He actually led. You mentioned this in his when you read his bio, but he led the Manhattan Declaration, which was Chuck Colson's sort of last real push, sort of last major public initiative. Which was this declaration around sex and abortion and marriage, and it was an amazing effort that Eric was the executive director at a very young age. It's where Eric and I first met. But one of the things I respect most about Eric is that we both have kind of gone down this path together on is as new evidence has come up, and we've seen really the effectiveness of some of the approaches of Donald Trump and his folks. Have been willing to say, hey, you know what? I might have been wrong about that in the past because this is really the way forward. And seeing Eric now really champion some of the things he said about the Senate, you have to understand this was a guy that was a chief of staff in the Senate, right? And so, he went in and saw the inside of the belly of the beast and came out and is saying things that probably makes him not very popular with certain people in that area. And that is one of it reminds me of what Tucker Carlson said about J.D. Vance when Tucker flew out for our gala last year, where he said the things he loved most about J.D. Vance is J.D. Vance rose to the highest levels of political and academic and sort of financial power in the world and got into that room that everybody wants to get into and said, this room is corrupt. I want nothing to do with it. And actually, I want to destroy it. And that's what J.D. Vance. So he's burned all these relationships and things like that. Eric, in many ways, Eric to become the chief of staff for a great senator in Josh Hawley, right? Josh Hawley is not one of these people that we're talking about, but to become a chief of staff and to get into that to that place, and then to leave the Senate and be like, you know what, this place is so fundamentally broken. We need to and call it out the way he has. It just shows a man that has strong conviction, and I regret saying all of this because he's going to use it against me one day. But it really is a great conversation and somebody I hope we have back.
We will definitely be sure to clip that and send it to him so that it can just heap burning coals upon your head, Aaron.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we've got that interview coming up. Stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. It's up next on The Narrative. Hey, Narrative listeners. Christians in the marketplace today face more unique and challenging threats than ever before. Businesses are following woke capitalism, chambers of commerce are beholden to social justice, and secular activists are chipping away Christians' First Amendment rights. As Ohio's only Christian chamber of commerce, the Christian Business Partnership stands in the gap to advocate for, to educate, and to celebrate Christian business owners. Joining the partnership also allows businesses to provide their employees with healthcare insurance, workers' compensation, and exclusive banking and educational discounts. To find out more and to join, go to cbpohio.org. That's cbpohio.org. And we're back on The Narrative. Mike Andrews, Aaron Baird, and we're joined now by Eric Teetsel, who's the Executive Vice President of Center for Renewing America. He also has recently served as the Vice President of Government Relations at the Heritage Foundation. Just a long track record of experience in government at the federal, state, local levels. Chief of Staff to U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, who was a guest on our podcast about a year or so ago. He held the roles of Legislative Director and Special Assistant. He also previously served as President of the Family Policy Alliance of Kansas, Director of Faith Outreach for the Marco Rubio presidential campaign, and Executive Director of the Manhattan Declaration for Life, Marriage, and Religious Freedom, and more. He's also host of a podcast called The Bully Pulpit, and he's going to mix it up with Aaron today. I think they're going to see who's the bigger bully today on the podcast. Is that what we're going for, guys?
Well, he's already bullied me once earlier this year when he raided my fantasy football roster, and now trying to do it again. Bijan Robinson is not for sale. Just I wanted to say that for everyone to hear, that you can go someplace else to raid their roster. Eric, thank you.
Dude, you're 2-7. You're not making the playoffs.
I'm not 2-7. I am 3-6. Thank you very much.
There's not. It's a distinction without a difference.
Well, an extra win there. So anyway,
Eric, it is so great to have you on the podcast today. We wanted to just have a conversation around the Trump campaign and really building towards his inauguration in January. As he builds his cabinet over the last week, Aaron, you and I were just joking about how this has become must-see television.
It's so much fun.
Just hanging on, waiting for the tweet to come through, that ESPN sounder of dun 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 dun. Like, who's the next draft pick? This has been great stuff. So, just from your perspective, Eric, what are you seeing from President Trump as he builds his cabinet?
Well, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Aaron, for having me. You guys are doing such phenomenal work out in Ohio. I constantly get to brag that I know you, and am so pleased with what the state of Ohio is doing for America. The people you're sending to Washington, most recently Senator Moreno, that's a big deal. Obviously, sending Senator Vance out to us was a very big deal. I think he's no less than the future of the conservative movement. So good things cooking out there. And I give Aaron like a very small smidgen of the credit.
That's good. That's probably too much still, but yeah.
Yeah, like you, it's just been so fun to sit back and watch this all take shape. I think it's fair to say that the president meant it when he talked about coming into this administration intent on the sort of transformational change that many of us Americans have sensed for a long time is necessary, and that he recognizes, as well as anyone, perhaps based on his first experience in the White House, what is actually going to be necessary to accomplish that transformational change. The regime is transpartisan. The fight is not just against Democrats. It is against a system, a cross-partisan system that defends its interests, which are to exist and to grow and to enrich those who are a part of that system. And what you're seeing with President Trump, both in his campaign, now as he builds his team, is a number of people who are not part of that system and who are equipped with a long track record of having put themselves and their careers on the line in order to fight against it. And now they will be in unprecedented positions of power to enact some change.
That's awesome. And Eric, just one like procedural aspect of this that's been really interesting. It feels like the names and announcements are coming out faster than I've seen in previous administrations. It feels like they are so ready to hit the ground running this time, unlike any time ever. Is that your sense of things too? Are they ahead of the curve on these announcements? I mean, already Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Attorney General, which we'll talk about here, and Secretary of State by all means. But it feels like we're way ahead of the curve of where we typically are with putting together a government.
Yeah, it does feel like that to me too. I haven't checked the tape to see where we actually stand historically, but I don't recall this number of names coming out this soon. And it's a very good thing. It speaks to preparedness. He identified who he wanted, and he wanted to put them in a position to succeed as absolutely early as he possibly could so that they can hit the ground running on January 20th.
So let's talk about some of those names though. The first one that is consuming all the news is Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. And I think I got to say every single appointment, and we're going to talk about some more of these when he's put them out, it was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then Matt Gaetz came up and it was like, wait, what? Who now? But I'll say where I'm on this is President Trump has time and time again shown when he does something like this, he has a plan and an idea in mind. And I believe especially at this point has earned the benefit of the doubt on a lot of these things. But what was your take when you saw Matt Gaetz as Attorney General?
Big, broad smile on my face. I don't think that it is an exaggeration to say that the politicization and the weaponization of the Department of Justice is the single most detrimental thing that has faced our country in recent history. We cannot survive as a republic if the American people do not have faith that justice is blind. If they think that prosecutions and the application of the law are being done on a partisan basis, they will have no respect for the law, nor should they. And if we don't have the consent of the governed, there can be no government. That's as foundational as it gets for us as a nation. And what we've seen, sadly, out of the Department of Justice over the last several years has been an extraordinary and unacceptable politicization and weaponization against people that they don't like and don't agree with. That includes, of course, the president himself, in conjunction with the intelligence agencies, which are right there with the Department of Justice in terms of their corruption. It includes other politicians, people I know in elected office who've had the FBI come after them in fishing expeditions. You know, we have like books filled with federal laws. And so what the FBI does is they just decide to launch an investigation into you. And because there's a law for everything, if you got a comma wrong on your tax return, or you gave a loan to somebody and didn't fill out the proper paperwork, you could be guilty of a federal crime. And that's all they need to ruin your life. And even if they don't have any grounds, you still have to hire lawyers for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they can ruin your life or ruin your ministry, as we've seen with our colleague in New York, right, Aaron? Yep. You can talk about pro-life people with the application of the FACE Act that has ruined the lives of grandmothers who are peacefully protesting the extinction of the unborn. It's completely unacceptable. It's banana republic stuff. And I think what you should take away from the appointment of Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General is a sense of the seriousness with which the president intends to root out that corruption and fix it, which is going to be hard. And there's a reason why Matt Gaetz is probably one of, if not the single most loathed member of Congress by his peers, including by his Republican peers. And it's because he has taken it upon himself to be an advocate for the things that his constituents want. And it turns out his constituents are a lot like a lot of American constituents. And what members of Congress often hear when they go back home is, why aren't you more like Matt Gaetz? And that really ticks them off, because these people don't like to be held to account. They don't like the sense that somebody is showing them up by actually doing their job. And I think that's what's behind a lot of his reputation. You also have instances like leading the fight to unseat Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Pissed a lot of people off. There's a lot of entrenched interest in that, a lot of money at play in that. And Matt Gaetz didn't care. His sense was that this was a speaker who was not living up to the expectations of the American people, and we could do better. And with an iron spine, he stood up to him. That is not easy to do. to say the least. And I think what President Trump saw is somebody with the courage to do that is somebody who has the courage to do what is necessary at DOJ.
Yeah, I like what JD Vance wrote, which is the main issue with Matt Gaetz is that he used his office to prosecute his political opponents and authorize federal agents to harass parents who were peacefully protesting at school board meetings. Oh, wait, that's actually Merrick Garland, the current attorney general.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which is this whole conversation around our norms and things like that, when actually the norms are what's weaponized DOJ for years now.
One of the sayings that we have on the Bully Pulpit podcast that I came across maybe a year ago is this principle that every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
And once I heard that and started ruminating on it, I started to see it everywhere. And I don't think you can see it anywhere more clearly than in the claims from the left that Donald Trump and the America First movement are, quote unquote, a threat to democracy. Right. This from the people who are politicizing and weaponizing the DOJ against their political enemies. This from the intelligence agencies that are literally soliciting bids from presidential campaigns to create fake evidence of corruption and then letting the intelligence agencies use that fake evidence paid for by a political opponent to launch an investigation into a candidate for the presidency. I mean, it's unbelievable that they would have the audacity to then turn around and say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Every accusation is a confession, and
or the party that didn't have a primary for their presidential nominee, and then all of a sudden said, the first time you have a presidential nominee, a major party presidential nominee, that never got a single vote to be 100%. Their nominee.
You just see it everywhere, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, other candidates or cabinet members now that really jumped out to me, I was excited to see Marco Rubio's name mentioned in there, and we had in your bio that you worked on his presidential campaign. So tell us a little bit about Senator Rubio, or now soon to be Secretary of State Rubio, and what he can bring to that role.
It's so exciting. I'm so proud to be affiliated with him in my own small way. I think Senator Rubio is one of the true, not just good men, but all-star members of the United States Senate. He's a serious person who has committed himself to his job. He has deeply held convictions and beliefs, especially when it comes to human rights and the violation of human rights that are occurring in some of the most strategic and important places around the world, namely China. No one in the United States Senate has done more to confront the threat of the Communist Chinese Party on multiple fronts than Rubio. You could say the same about Cuba, obviously, with his background. That's an area of special interest to him. And Venezuela is another one. You could also talk about Iran. This is a guy who has lots of experience based on his position on the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, his own personal experience being from Florida, being of Latino descent. And he's, again, just put his money where his mouth is when it comes to these issues by introducing legislation, sanctions, doing the work to prepare him to be a Secretary of State. I think it's an awesome story. I can't imagine a better representative of America on the world stage than Marco Rubio.
And I mean, the other thing that we're excited about here, I'm both as an American, I'm incredibly excited about it. As an Ohioan, I'm a little disappointed, but I think it's obviously weighed out more that with what he's going to do is the new heads of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, and Ohio's own and friend of the narrative, Vivek Ramaswamy. When you saw this, Eric, what was your first take on it? What was your thought on that one?
It like, is this real life? You know, I was trying to explain this to my wife, who is just so wonderful in that she is not engrossed in all this stuff in the way that I am. It's very refreshing and healthy of her. And I was like, how do I explain to my wife the trajectory from a meme of a dog to a cryptocurrency to the wealthiest man in the world working with Donald Trump to create a government agency? This is a leap. And I love it. There's what's not to love. And by the way, contra Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, it's not actually an agency. The Doge does not exist as a government agency, or a department. They had to call it a department because it wouldn't be Doge if the D wasn't there. But it's not a department, which would require congressional action. It's more like a commission, which the president can set up, and which will allow these guys to do this incredible work and apply their extraordinary talent to efficiency and effectiveness of government as they've done in their private sector world, without having to like actually get a government job and divest from everything they're involved in and do all the things that would be a non-starter. So I think it's awesome. I think it's shrewd, by the way, and this wouldn't have been apparent to most people, but for those of us who geek out on this stuff, it was very telling that in the announcement of the Doge, they specifically referenced that they'll work with the Office of Management and Budget. Yeah. And that's important because OMB is a cabinet level agency, and every single dollar of federal spending, every program, every initiative goes through OMB, and OMB has the ability to stop them, to turn off the money. So it just goes to show that they know what they're doing and they're serious about getting it done.
Yeah, and Office of Budget Management last time had a pretty great cabinet head and good friend of yours, Russ Vogt, and we'll see what happens there next time. But I will say too, the other thing that jumped out to me when that news came was the 2-year sunset on it.
Year and a half,
right? Yeah, exactly.
By July 4th.
By July 4th, 2026. And this is one of the things when some people were saying online, like, that oh, this is just a show thing for them, and this is going to just be kind of a way to get headlines. At the end of the day, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have really nothing to gain by this. They're both billionaires in their own right, very successful. It's all for them. Everything is reputation right now. And if they go into this thing for 18 months and they don't shrink government and they don't slash things, and it is just a joke, it's an embarrassment to them, right? They're going into this with every intention to shut things down, because they also, it's the biggest reason why folks were drawn to Trump in the first place, or one of the biggest reasons I think folks were drawn to Trump, is that they don't need this, right? Trump was going to go down in history as the big personality he already was. He doesn't need a government job or things like that to make himself relevant, and that's true for both Vivek and Elon too. So
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I just want to ask, can they do it? Like there's so much government bloat right now, and the bureaucracy's gotten so big. Is there a path for this to be a success?
It's going to be really hard, but they know that, and they do have a mandate, which is a big deal. But I will say, to quote one of my favorite Bible verses, "Put not your faith in Congress, in whom there is no salvation." It is going to be very difficult the first time that members of the House and members of the Senate are confronted with the actual reality of cutting money from the government. They do not like to do that. They talk about it, and there's certain pockets of money that they'd be glad to touch as long as it's not the money that they care about. Mm-hmm. But when you have 435 members of Congress in all 50 states and 100 senators in all 50 states, that's all the money. And so, somebody has got to sacrifice. It's got to go. And we're gonna test whether or not these guys mean it when they say they're there to advance President Trump's agenda and the agenda that the American people sent them to Washington to do, because it will mean killing some sacred cows along the way that haven't been touched in a very long time. Things like the Department of Defense, which is bloated and wasteful. The Department of Defense hasn't been able to pass an audit in like decades. There's all kinds of stats out there about the hundreds of billions of dollars they can't account for. They just disappeared. Stats about the fact that I'll get this specific data wrong, but the principle applies. There are like several times more flag officers per soldier in the DoD today than there were at the height of World War II. Why? Why do we have this administrative gloat? It's basically an American university with guns.
I was gonna say, it sounds like public schools. You beat me to it.
No, exactly. So, but these are hard things because, as a Republican Party, conservative movement, the idea that we would cut military funding is sort of anathema. And that's not the whole story, right? We're talking about cutting bloat and wastefulness and increasing effectiveness and efficiency, but it's a hard sell when you've got a bunch of subcontractors in your congressional district. So we'll see what happens when the rubber meets the road.
That was my reaction. There was a Politico story that was criticizing Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, and the line that got me of like their dagger line on Pete Hegseth was they interviewed a anonymous defense industry lobbyist who said these guys don't know what the bleep they're doing. And I was like, oh, well, they just need to put that out there for the Pete Hegseth confirmation. And if that doesn't get him every vote in the Senate, then you'll know who's in the pockets of the defense industry lobbyists.
Exactly. Your listeners may know this, but there's a word that all of Washington uses to describe these people, and it's called the blob. Literally, the blob. It's nameless, it's faceless, it's not partisan. It is the military industrial complex, and it includes Republicans and Democrats and mostly people who just want to make money. And they are insular. It's a cartel. They credential their own people and then raise them up so they can take over someday. It's extraordinarily difficult to break through, but we're starting to break through.
That's great.
Well, Aaron, I got a question for you because I know we sent this around our Signal chat, and certainly, Eric, I want you to weigh in on this as well. But the news about the Department of Education and Trump saying that he's coming in and taking that down too. So, what were your thoughts when you saw that news?
Well, again, honestly, the first thing that it made me think of was, oddly enough, the embassy in Israel. Where, for years you had politicians, actually Republicans and Democrats, talking about moving the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And no one ever did it, right? Until Trump came in and said, hey, we're moving the embassy. And they said, well, you can't actually do that. And he did it. And, the world was safer when he first did it before the other folks came in. And I think this is very similar, this is another one of those conservative talking points that works really well on the campaign trail of shutting down the Department of Education. But again, time and time again, we've just seen these folks actually get in, and they don't even have, it's not even they don't talk about it. They never had a plan to do it in the first place. So for the president to come out and be very clear that, yep, we're doing this right away, is so unbelievably transformational. This is one of these things, regular listeners of the narrative know I have my school boards are a waste of time rant. And this is actually going to undermine my school boards is a waste of time rant, because one of the reasons currently school boards are a waste of time is that the way these school districts actually work is that the Department of Education comes down and says, you need to pass this policy or we're not going to give you money anymore. And the school boards say, yep, happy to require boys and girls bathrooms and men and women's sports, or else in the Biden administration, or we're not going to give you your poor kids food anymore. They literally passed that resolution or passed that rule to the Department of Education and Agriculture. Getting that out is going to be a massive game changer. And that money, as Trump said, that money's not just disappearing. That money's going to come to the states now. So, we're ahead of the curve now in Ohio on school choice. Right now, we spend let's just take your average school district in Ohio. They get around $14,000 to $16,000 per kid in tax dollars. About, let's say 6 to 7 of that is state dollars. The rest of that is federal money and then local money. Well, if all that federal money is now coming to the state, that makes the voucher able to increase, right? It makes more kids be able to access that. So again, that's one of those things. If Trump just did that in 4 years, that would fundamentally transform the landscape in America. But yeah, Eric.
4,500 people work at the Department of Education. I think it's an annual budget of $68 billion the last time I saw it.
That's almost the budget of the state of Ohio, just for context. But Ohio's budget is like $90 billion.
Yeah, that can do a lot of good for a lot of kids, and not being laundered through 4,000 federal bureaucrats along the way. It's a beautiful thing.
So, Eric, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned a little bit ago, talking about Congress broadly. Let's talk about the people that are going to be herding the cattle over there. Speaker Johnson has been reelected as Speaker of the House, and John Thune was elected Majority Leader. What's just CRA? What's your take on these two and their ability to actually get some of these things done? And what's the urgency? Like, is this going to be? Are we going to have kumbaya for a few months, or is it just going to all break down into fighting before we even get there?
Yeah, it's not going to take long to figure out where we're at. It likely be pre-inauguration. Honestly, we're going to head into a lame duck session of Congress here. I assume your listeners know what that is. For those who don't, we had an election. New members of Congress don't get sworn in until January 3rd. So in the 2 months between Election Day and January 3rd, the guys who were elected last time still get to be in office, and they bring up legislation. They can vote on it. They can pass laws, have them signed into law, even though voters have already kicked them out of office. And what that means is that a lot of the worst stuff that you could possibly imagine gets done in a lame duck because people aren't accountable anymore for their decisions. So, but Mike Johnson will be, and he's in charge. And so we're going to see, if they pass a bloated omnibus spending bill that's 2,000 pages long and spends trillions of dollars, that would cut against his promise to put the finances of our country, the spending priorities of our country into President Trump and his team's hands and let them have an effect on it. If they pass a bloated omnibus bill that goes until September of 2025, that's the entire first year of the Trump administration where they can't touch the budget. Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's insane. Everyone who knows anything about politics knows that early in your administration is when you have the most juice to get things done. To not want to take advantage of the appropriations process would be a complete and total waste of a momentous opportunity. So we'll see. When it comes to John Thune, again, we'll see. He made some promises. I don't want to get too wonky here unless you guys invite me to, and then I will wonk out as long as you want.
Honestly, let it rip on that because you worked in the Senate. I mean, and I remember talking to you while you were over there, and I mean, I have to be careful saying this because you actually still have all your hair and I don't, but you were pulling your hair out over there when you were with Senator Hawley, just seeing how the actual inside of the belly of the beast works over there. But yeah, let it rip just a little bit. We'll pull you back if you get too far down the hole. But
okay, the Senate is a fake institution. Okay, it's fake. It is supposedly the world's greatest deliberative body, but every accusation is a confession, and the opposite is true. The Senate doesn't do anything ever that matters, and that's by choice. Because doing things that matter is hard. And what senators want more than anything is to not do things that are hard.
Because to be a senator.
Yeah. It's to be a senator and to get to keep being a senator and to make people happy along the way. None of that means doing things that are hard. And this is why they don't pass any bills except the ones they absolutely have to, which are the appropriations bills and the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. Those will get done around Christmas Eve time. Because what happens is they take the whole year and they say, we're not going to use any of this time to write bills, have hearings on bills, have markups in committee on bills, send bills that have been marked up to the floor, have an amendment process and a debate on the floor of bills, pass those bills and appropriate money accordingly. No. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to wait until Christmas. And then someone in the leader's office will take a bill out of a drawer that was written by a bunch of lobbyists, and they will say, if we don't pass this bill, the government is going to shut down because they don't have any money. And that would be bad. And you will be blamed if you let that happen. And oh, by the way, are you really going to cause all of your colleagues to miss Christmas with their grandkids because of your obstinate commitment to like the Constitution? Please don't be ridiculous. just give us unanimous consent to bypass all of the rules that dictate how debates are supposed to happen. And literally in a matter of hours, we can do the entire appropriations process. And by the way, it's Christmas, so no one's paying attention. And that has happened literally every year that I have been in Washington. It is a travesty that this is allowed to happen. It is completely unbecoming of our country. And it is allowed to happen because there is a faction of senators, a majority faction of senators of both parties who want it to happen. So this is why I look, I'm as much a critic of someone like Mitch McConnell as anybody, but with an asterisk, which is that Mitch McConnell is the Roger Goodell of the United States Senate. Aaron, you will understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, is widely regarded as sort of like one of the most evil people on the planet. Yeah. And that's fine by him because he makes $50 million a year and has an airplane to be the sin eater for the owners for whom he works. So everybody can point their fingers at Roger Goodell, and he takes all the hits. He takes all the boos at the NFL draft. You can see him. He delights in it.
He laughs in it. Yeah.
He laughs in it so that all of that stuff is not directed at the owners themselves. It's directed at him. He takes it and he makes a lot of money for it. Well, that's Mitch McConnell. Only in this case, the owners are the senators.
Yeah.
So when they go home, their constituents hate Mitch McConnell and they think that their guy is just doing a stand-up job and their guy is only too happy to let them believe that. So is it Colonel Caffey from A Few Good Men? I'm mixing my metaphors now, who says, you need me on that wall. You want me on that wall, right? You sleep better at night knowing that I'm doing the ugly things behind the scenes that make it possible for you to live the kind of life that you want. That's Mitch McConnell. And it remains to be seen if that's going to be John Thune. I hope not. He has promised to change the way that the Senate works for an open amendment process, for actual deliberation, the kinds of things that people think of when they see the United States Senate with all those desks and microphones. Like that's what the floor is for. But again, it remains to be seen. End of rant.
That was a good one. I appreciated that. Thank you. As we look at the makeup of the House of Representatives and the Senate, we just got official word from ABC News, I think, finally called it for Republican control in the House.
Yeah, but we knew that.
We knew it was going to happen, but when the other side admits it, you're in good shape. But how do you see that playing out for President Trump as he takes office in 2025? I know he had Republican majority in the House and Senate for part of his first term, and that was sort of a sticking point for some people that he didn't get a lot done. Is he stepping into more favorable circumstances this time around, do you think, Eric?
Yeah, he is. It's still a very small majority and getting smaller as he appoints members of the House.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one thing with
we need to
Stefanik and Gates and
got to be a little careful about that one. So obviously, when you have a small majority, it makes every single member that much more important because they can kind of single-handedly bring things down. But Donald Trump is the single most influential and popular politician in America, certainly on the right. And that creates enormous heft. Members will be, I think, reluctant to get on the wrong side of the president. And so there should be no excuse. However, having said that, so much of what needs to be done can be done through executive action. So much that has happened has been evil wrought on the country by executive action that it can be undone by executive action. So Congress is good. There are some laws we should pass. There's some things we should do. As I mentioned, we need to use the appropriations process. There's this other process called reconciliation that we should use to get a lot done. But even if all that stuff kind of fades out or is only half of what it could be, we're going to see a president use the power of his office in ways that will feel very revolutionary to our contemporary eyes, but are not actually revolutionary. It's going to be a return to a constitutional form of government, and it will feel foreign because we have strayed so far from that form of government. We're going to have to take a deep breath, get you comfortable with it, but recognize that this is what's necessary to get us back to where we should be.
So I got two more things here for as we start to wind down here. One, just real quick, and I haven't talked with anybody about this yet, but is there any, I mean, the one thing I'm seeing from the left right now that they're really fired up on is they've got to jam through all of Biden's last judicial appointments over the next in lame duck here.
Yeah.
Is there, practically speaking, anything that can be done to stop something like that? Or is it because they have all the seats necessary to do it, they can suspend the rules and run them through?
They can't suspend the rules. That requires unanimous consent, and they won't get that. They can, however, take advantage of the current rules to get done as much as they can. And there are some things that members can do to make sure that they draw out the process so that it takes as long as it possibly can take. Hopefully they'll do that. But no, if you have the Senate in your hands and you have the president, and you jump through the hoops, you can get things done.
Yeah. Well, then last thing I've got, again, Mike, I don't know if you have any more after this, but I think for every 2 or 3 years we go through this cycle where the media and certain folks on the left want to say social conservatives, but being a big fan of Kevin Roberts, I hate that term. Christian conservatives are dead. We've got no we've got no voice left in politics. But we saw this time it was our very issue that won not just the presidency, but even the Bernie Moreno's race here was really speaking out against the transgender ideology and agenda that's being forced on our kids, in particular sports, and the SAFE Act, stopping these trans procedures on kids. How is that impacting Washington? And my perception of it is the Dems aren't walking away from this issue anytime soon. So are we just going to keep winning elections for the next 50 years now?
Well, 50 years might be a lot to hope for. But I tend to agree with you. I think they're ideologically wedded to this stuff, and they have been for a really long time, right? I mean, literally since the 1960s, if not even earlier, the ideological roots of this stuff have been there, and the fruit that is being born is fruit of an ideological branch that leads where it leads. It's inevitable. You are always going to get to transgenderism and polyamory and bestiality and all, and pedophilia and all the other crap that is now starting to become a norm when you started from the place from which they started, which was unfettered sexual license, right? Unmoored from anything. So now they have to live with it, and we'll see if they can backtrack. There have been some voices encouraging them to backtrack for purely political reasons. Maybe some of those members will start to soft pedal their support for these issues for political purposes. It wouldn't surprise me, for example, if you see some names drop off of their co-sponsorship of the Equality Act, right?
Yeah.
Which would be nice to see. But the minute they have power again, they will be back, and they will push again. So we can't take anything for granted. And I do think that you will see attempts by the new Congress to use this as a wedge issue and maybe get some legislation and some executive things done that will make it hard for them to retake that ground in the future, whether that's the school stuff that you mentioned, Bureau of Prisons is another area where this issue, HHS is another area where this issue has arisen, the military. There's lots of places where you could do a lot of good.
And just my 2 cents on it, like President Trump needs to just start reinterpreting Title IX right, but run Save Women's Sports as a standalone bill, make it need 60 votes in the Senate, and make Democrats say where they are on this bill in particular, because again, it's such an exposing issue of where these folks are on just such a radical basis. And I do though want to ask as well. Sorry, it reminded me of one other question here of where are we on the life issue. I will say, Bernie Moreno, I give him a ton of credit because he stood strong on his pro-life views. They spent $28 million. The Dems and Sherrod Brown spent $28 million attacking him on that. It was 41% of the total ad spend against Bernie was on him being pro-life, and it didn't matter. It was a non-factor in the election.
Yeah.
So where are we, just big picture, as a pro-life movement on this? And is that being noticed by some candidates that, hey, the Dems' only message this time was abortion, and they got swept?
I think a savvy, purely political understanding of the abortion issue when it comes to electoral politics has to recognize two critical facts, I think. And tell me if I'm wrong, Aaron, because you're better at this than me. But I think these are the two facts. One, America is a moderately pro-choice country. Period. End of story. I'm sorry. I don't like it. We're working to change it. But surveys, election data, it all shows that a majority of the American people believe that abortion should be legal under some circumstances, right?
Yeah,
we can say that.
Yeah,
nationally, maybe not true in every state, but nationally.
Just to that point, Eric, I mean, surveys, everything shows that, but also experientially. I mean, this is one of my things that gets me frustrated, is that, especially in some Christian circles, you'll have people saying America is the new Babylon and all these, and they're just rightfully railing, and then they turn around and start attacking folks like us that tried to lead the fight against the abortion amendment here, and we got smoked. They're like, oh, well, you did. Well, listen, guys, like, what kind of country we live in today. We knew this was going to be a difficult fight. It's why we pushed 60% beforehand, because yes, the polls showed us that we were going to have a really hard time winning this thing, but also too, just, you can't walk down the street without being, pounded in the face with a sexual message, and that's everywhere, right? You can't separate abortion from that. Sorry.
No, you can't. In fact, again, going back to the ideological roots, the sort of founding mothers of feminism and the pro-abortion movement would say, I think this is second wave feminism, that you have to have abortion in order to have the kind of sexual license that they demand. They go hand in hand. And so, okay, so that's point number one. But point number two is that abortion is not the issue that matters the most to most Americans.
Yeah.
So they may not be entirely with us, but it is also not the thing that motivates them when they go to the polls the most. That can be hard for people like me to hear, and you, and probably your listeners, because it is the thing we care about the most. And also the loudest voices on the other side, clearly there's a faction where it's the thing they care about the most. But the vast majority of Americans in the middle simply do not triage this issue among the top 5 things. And that was true in this election. The economy, the crisis at the border, the sense that crime was out of control, the presence of America on the world stage, and sort of the sense that the whole world was sort of out of control. All of these issues were known to be more significant in the minds of voters when they were choosing who to vote for than the issue of abortion. And that's why Donald Trump won. He successfully managed to deflect the criticism that he was extremely pro-life, and to put the focus on the things that were the sort of kitchen table issues. And in so doing, he was the first Republican to win the popular vote since 2004. I think cement a political realignment on the scale of what Ronald Reagan did in 1980.
Yeah, and I'll just say I've even started counseling, advising some friends, candidates, things like that, on the abortion issue. By all means, like, be able to defend why abortion is morally wrong and reprehensible. But sometimes, especially in the middle of a heated debate, when folks are coming at you when the left or the media is coming after you on why are you pro-life, honestly, it's a totally acceptable answer to say, well, I'm pro-life because I'm a Christian. But the things that's keeping people up at night are blam, bam, these kind of things. Like, your average voter is going to say, oh, yeah, my cousin's a Christian. He's a good guy. He's pro-life. He's normal, right? But what are you going to do for me with my grocery prices or my gas prices or things? Like, this idea, what the left tried to do is say, well, if somebody's pro-life, that means they're weird and they could come. Voters don't think that way. Everyone has, just like all of us have a pro-abortion family member or friend or neighbor. Like, and they're totally fine with having differing views on these. Again, that's not to say that we don't push this issue and try to do everything we can through every means we can to save as many lives as possible. But I think this is kind of simplified down for especially political leaders how to talk about this issue. And to your point, I think having that being honest with ourselves about where we actually stand.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, last question I have for you, and maybe the most important one of the day. Can you give us some more examples of how bad Aaron is at fantasy football?
Take it easy. We don't have enough time for that. All right, that's gonna be.
Wait, hold on. This is for me. I need that. Yeah, your taste in sports teams is so bad. I need to know that you're bad at fantasy.
We weren't
going
to be good this year, and I made. Anyway, go on. Where can people
best?
Find
Here's
you?
the best. Like truly though, like before the season started, Aaron said that Tucker Kraft, his beloved Green Bay Packers tight end, was going to be a top 5 tight end, and I said no, he's not. And then he traded me Tucker Kraft, and Tucker Kraft became a top 5 tight end.
That's pretty bad.
And it's
that's
awesome.
pretty bad.
Listen, I'm always working. I'm playing the long game here, Eric. That's really the thing. And I just wait till the next one. No.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Well, Eric, thanks so much. This has been a great conversation. Where can our listeners find you and follow your work?
Yeah, I'm on X at Eric Teetsel. Would love if y'all would check out the Bully Pulpit podcast, which you can find on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever.
Great, Eric Teetsel. Thanks so much for joining us today on The Narrative. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Bear, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.